All right, here we go. So A2A, MCP, lots of jargon, but this is significant. So if you've felt in the last 60 days that enterprise AI agents have become front and center and very real, you are absolutely right. And recently at the Google Next conference, it was all about their AI agent strategy and something called A2A, which in conjunction with something called MCP from Anthropic helps us realize, I think, in a very short order, the potential that we've all been talking a lot about when it comes to the implications of digital labor, which is really what AI agents are. And I don't want to steal any thunder here. I want to pass it to you, Tati, and Steve, et cetera. But just to frame it up, if MCP from Anthropic is effectively enabling AI agents to connect with all these various tools and data sets that are, in all these different environments in a highly secure and standardized way. And then A2A from Google is enabling, said agents to work with each other, right? And create multi-agent systems. The reason these two are catching, so much attention is because, Tati, let's go to you first. I think a lot of people have been stressing in retail in particular about all these legacy systems and this, that, and anything you have to rip and replace. And then along comes MCP meets A2A. So first question off the top here is what gets you so excited about these developments, looking at things through the lens of a world-class operator and customer experience leader in retail and otherwise?
So many things get me excited about this and reading through that. I'll stick to my five top things that I really
You can go where you
that I
want.
really
Yeah,
that I
15
really love
minutes.
about this.
Yeah.
This is so the first one is the context amplification, right? So MCP and A2A is not just automation, but you amplifying context. So in retail, associates are drowning in data, but they're starving for insights. These protocols could really finally connect what's so fragmented and what we've been talking about for so long, and give these frontline teams a complete picture that they need in order to make the right decisions, the high quality decisions they need to make in the moment. So that's number one. Number two, there's a labor efficiency piece, which is something that we're all talking about, but nobody's quite, as I'm talking to folks out there, nobody's quite sure what that means. But what I tell you what it means in this context. We're facing wage pressures, high turnover, shrinking talent pools. So the shift from this reactive to proactive AI is these AI agents handling routine tasks that at the end it means that we can be more selective about where we deploy human talent and how this human talent can deliver exceptional experiences with the aid of AI. This is bringing to life this concept, this idea that we've been talking about for so long. So that's the third one is more of a question than it is, but I think that this really can help tie this together. And I love to hear what Steve has to say about all of this, but this one also specifically. But we are going to need, as we deploy these AI agent teams, we need clear guardrails
Mhm.
around customer data, customer interaction. What does it mean for privacy expectations, compliance, and all those things? So this is a really big question that I think that this new technology can really help us solve in a much simpler way than we have been trying to solve this far. And I say the last thing is the organizational readiness challenge on this, which is the elephant in the room, right? When we shift from automation to autonomy, we fundamentally require different governance, training, change management approaches that than we had in previous tech initiatives that were much less disruptive. So are our organizations culturally prepared for the true human AI collaboration?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of enterprises out there in the retail space and other industries that are not necessarily prepared or having to prepare very quickly because this stuff is just moving at a rapid pace. We knew 2025 was going to be the year of AI agents. I think going into the year, it was like all about agents. You can see it on TV now with Salesforce and their Agent Force ads out there with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. And that's kind of the reality of what agents can do for companies. And if I think about like in the retail space, those commercials are really around like knowing the customer. And then if you knew the customer ahead of time, then you would be able to proactively create a very compelling user experience. To your point, Tati, around like the data systems that exist within retailers, I think there's going to be an evolution with these protocols and these new technologies and agents itself to allow us to connect data that we never connected before. And it does lead to, questions around data integrity, data security, data rights. But the beautiful thing about the position where we're at is now we can tap into various different systems to combine data. So your comment around, retailers and their workers basically having data at their hands, that's very true. But sometimes it's separated. We've talked in the past around like e-commerce data, not necessarily connecting to like in-store data. Alec, you've talked about your stories around as a consumer and, having tough experiences like returning things. Well, now if you have the ability to tap in and combine those data systems, but leave that data where it is, but then create a good experience for the worker in the store or online or customer support to tap into that data and provide a good consumer experience for the consumer, then it's wonderful. I think agents can do that, but there's a long way to go within enterprises around creating that data security and data governance and all that. So you're only as good as the data itself, your information architecture, and then the guardrails that you have.
Love it. Yeah, I'm gonna double click on that one, Steve, because you nailed it, and I want to make sure this point comes through, and we'll add a link to this. But if you look at Google for Developers, there's a page that lists that the partners that contributed to the A2A protocol, and this is all part of the keynotes and this, that, and other thing at the conference. But I think one of the things that jumps out at me is the diversity of the profile of the players on that page, right? So I think a lot of people, and I'm not going to name names, but I think a lot of people have been out there talking about SaaS is dead and this, that, and the other thing, and just a lot of really big ideas about this, that, and the other thing. And when I look at that slide or that blog post, where my mind goes is, wow, there are a lot of very substantial technology companies that have been around for 15 plus years that are doubling and tripling down on their own investments to elevate the quality of their customer experience by investing natively in generative AI and AI infrastructure and semantic layers and this and other thing, not only to benefit the one-to-one relationship between a customer and their technology, but also to, and equally, if not more importantly, to enable interoperability between these various technical systems, the various data sets that used to historically be locked in systems of record, which created cages. And I think that what this tells us is that things are about to become a whole lot more democratized. And I think the innovation opportunity is quite significant. So Steve, I don't know from your background, I know you've got that background. How significant is it, some of these names of these companies on there who are creating these highly collaborative, almost like highways, right? We had cars that are maybe, self-driving, but there weren't highways. And now all of a sudden it feels like they just invented some highways. So here we go. So what are your thoughts on that verbose question, which I'm not really even sure what it is?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very significant in the fact that large companies, large consulting companies, all the way down to small consulting companies can now play in this space is huge, right? So you get the Deloittes of the world, or even the SaaS providers like Box and others, right? That are doubling down because this is a revolutionary technology, and they have to keep up as well. So if they don't keep up and they don't keep pace, then there's going to be other startups and other small to mid-market companies that are going to grow and basically, eat their market share. So I think there's a natural point of them having to double down. The thing that I love about it as an entrepreneur is that it's a little like the AI agent marketplaces that exist right now, which, Google came out with theirs, and there's going to be others. It's going to grow and it's going to proliferate significantly very quickly, and then it'll shrink and there'll be acquisitions, all that fun stuff. But I kind of liken it to like the App Store, right? Like your iPhone App Store that came out when the iPhone really became popular. It sort of allowed for all these individual apps and entrepreneurial companies and startups to basically build their own tech, put it into these marketplaces, and as it relates to the business function, it comes down to how significant is that workflow or that business function going to basically provide value to the end customer. So I think it's an amazing time. It's an amazing time for entrepreneurs. It's an amazing time for startups, and the people that move fast are going to thrive. As it relates to like the retail industry, I think the retailers that get it and understand that they can use these technologies as a layer on top of what they already have, and those systems of record that you said are going to be able to create those compelling user experiences for their consumers and lead the market share, right?
Yeah. Without a doubt. And I'm going to give a big shout out to Aaron Levy, founder and CEO of Box. I'm always a fan of AI Twitter and whatnot, but he's always been prolific over there. But I think it was Cognitive Revolution and several other interviews last few weeks. I listened to a few over the weekend, and the way he's unpacking the investments they're making and the way they're thinking about Box AI and interoperability is lights out. So for those that are podcast people and or Twitter people, check him out. Tati, I got a question for you that builds off of this, and I know I'm going to put some words in your mouth, and you can disagree by all means, as always. But AI agents are basically digital labor, and digital labor has to be onboarded just like human beings have to be onboarded. And I think that one of the things that we're starting to collectively realize is, wow, as you said earlier, there are wonderful opportunities for enterprise AI agents to collaborate with human beings, where the agents can work 24/7 on stuff that is really important but quite tedious. And they have photographic memories, and they don't need to sleep, and so they're good. They can do all those types of things. But the only way you can kind of figure this stuff out and then optimize is that you have to have an operator's perspective on the way things actually get done, not the way that's represented in PowerPoints and spreadsheets and these types of things. So when you think about the next step, in connecting the dots between the A2A meets MCP ecosystem opportunity and some of those logos on that article, how do you think about the way retailers, again, we're just sticking with retail, but how do you think about the way they should think about onboarding AI labor, right? Onboarding these multi-agent systems. And how do you think the average quote unquote retailer is going to respond to all of a sudden having a bunch of digital, colleagues and coworkers? And how do you help make that successful?
So much to unpack in that question. So I'll do my best to talk about the way I think about it. And you mentioned it, you got to think of this onboarding the same way you would a new employee. So it's not just, you're not teaching them how to do the one thing or the two things or the five things. You're really thinking about the full context of the business. It's understanding in the retail business is understanding seasonal patterns, local market nuances, brand standards, and all these different things that would typically take an associate months, if not years, to learn. And really being that super smart sidekick. And that's the way I think about these agents, right? How can you have a super smart sidekick and in order for that to happen, and this is a total shameless plug here, that you need the right partners. you need the domain experts because you cannot have the correct information there. You cannot have the right context in
No way.
this if you do not have the right partners that have your back. And the visual for me is really holding your hand so you don't fall off that ladder. Because once you get on that ladder, you got to keep moving, but you got to keep moving in the right direction. You can easily fall off as well, and you can easily just be spending money on things that don't really bring results, which is normally what a lot of the folks that I talk to out there have been sort of burned with in the past, right? They invest in something, there's a lot of promise. The thing we talk about so many times is the silver bullets, and folks say, you know, do this, do that, and then they do it, and there's effort, there's investment, and there's no real results. But what I would say related to this specifically, and going back to your comment earlier on the list of companies that are connected to this, right? When you look at this, and we could go into a conversation about, well, these guys invested in, you know, not to pick on it, but they invested in Salesforce. They invested in all sorts of different technology out there that cost a lot and took a long time to implement. So they have had this experience, you know, if you will. But these companies are still, they're investing in this now. And you could say, well, they could be, you know, just saying, well, we're going to stick with the investment we made in the past and it works for us. But these guys are not asleep at the wheel, right? They invested in this because it makes sense. So any COO, CXO, CEO, Chief Innovation Officer, whoever is listening in, take this list and show it to your CFO. Take this back and say, hey, these guys, you know, are doing this for a reason. If you needed any proof that you needed to do something. And the other piece that I would say to this is that when we're talking about training these models, and it sounds so big. And we tend to think about, as humans, that many times we tend to think about things at 0 or 100, right? It's either everything or nothing. And the cool thing about all of this is that it can be modular. It's a lot less scary than it sounds like, because you could pick something very specific to try and solve. You could pick you could start small with those tasks, specifically speaking about the optimization of productivity of your employees in the front line. Very specific thing to do. You can be very modular. It can be, so the harm is potentially very, very small, or close to none. The investment is much smaller than you think it could be, but the upside is much bigger. So I think that if you walk away with nothing from an operator standpoint, is really think about this not as a complete change in the way you're looking at technology, but, you know, adding another flavor of ice cream to the top ice cream flavors you love.
I love it. Let's leave it there. That's absolutely perfect. And I agree with everything you said, including you can start as small or go as big and as fast, but you got to do something because that train has left the station. So Steve, Tati, as always, appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Al.